Freedom is not free. Discover what it takes. It's time to tap and move forward.
Hello and welcome to Tap and Move Forward. I'm your host, Lynn Shelley. Today's guest has been an active duty Navy SEAL for over 20 years. He started enlisted and moved into an officer position. He has led SEALs in thousands of combat operations. He has a lot of great stories and powerful skills that can help you in your life and career. As combat is the nature of his job, he talks about some of the realities of combat. This is a War Stories episode. Some of the content is graphic and displays some of the challenges and realities of combat. With technicalities out of the way, from now on, I will start each episode with a challenge that relates to the interview, an actionable item that can increase your skills and capacities. For today's episode, Omar talks about being a master of the basics. Practicing the same thing over and over again, although boring, you become so powerful at a simple skill that you outperform anyone else. If you want to purposefully develop yourself in the same manner as a Navy SEAL, your challenge is to pick one thing you find boring but wish you were better at. Practice and practice it until it becomes second nature. For example, if you can't help but push the snooze every morning, practice laying in bed, have your alarm go off every 20 seconds, and jump out of bed every single time, and training your body to respond that way every time it hears the alarm. Maybe even adding in a push-up. So the alarm goes off, you jump out of bed and do a push-up over and over again until that is your second nature to wake up in the morning. Or another example would be if you always choose to eat candy when you are on your diet, purposefully put candy in front of you and an apple or a glass of water and practice saying no to the candy and eat a slice of apple or a sip of water over and over and over again, practicing that simple choice over and over until it's so natural that you aren't conflicted in the moment. If you are one of the few who are dedicated to making valuable changes in your life and level up to this challenge, share with me what skill you chose and how you trained yourself to make a bad habit into a second nature skill. You can comment anywhere on the Tap and Move Forward website or social media sites where I will be posting what I did. Without further delay, here's the interview with Omar Vieira. Why did you join the military and how old were you?
So, I was 17. I had to get my father to sign me up, pretty much. I turned 18 in boot camp.
Wow.
So straight out of high school. I was a young high schooler, I guess, is that age. Why I joined? So I guess for several reasons, but one of the biggest ones is my father was in the military. We have a huge military background. My dad did 30 years in the Army. His culminating event was the command sergeant major of the 82nd with General Shelton back.
Wow.
This was 95 or something, 94, 95 time frame. So I huge military background, same with grandfather. They're all merchant marine. Well, they were fishermen from Portugal that came over during World War II, escaping the war type deal, and they were immigrants, and they came over, and to get their citizenship, they volunteered to do the merchant marine thing, shipping ammunition back and forth for the Allies. So a lot of cool stories, a lot of sunken ships by German U-boats and stuff, but besides that, I think that's why I just felt this.
So why did you choose the Navy?
There was this mystical thing about the SEAL teams. There was only one book out at the time. It was like The Men with Green Faces, about Vietnam era SEALs. And they, explicitly talked about missions in there. And that was like the only thing out there. The Discovery Channel did like a documentary about SEALs. And I think that's what sealed the deal for me.
You saw that?
I saw that. My father kind of took me to talk to some Army Special Forces, some ODA guys that he knew. But there was just something about the SEAL teams that was just somewhat unknown. It was just this mystery. And I was a beach boy too. I grew up on the East Coast, so it wasn't California, but I love the ocean type deal. So
You had to be pretty motivated about it if you were trying to get your dad to sign for you at 17.
yeah, I think my father, and I have the same attitude of my son. He didn't give a crap on really what I wanted to do, but I wasn't going to stay home with a part-time job somewhere, either go to college or join the military. So I joined the military, and he was fine with it. I didn't hear anything from him really much.
So did you know right away when you were signing the line that you wanted to be and you were intending to be a SEAL?
Yeah, that was the only purpose of me going to the Navy. Besides that, I didn't know anything about the Navy, besides the little I knew about the SEAL team. So yeah, it was that or nothing. I don't know what I would have done if I would have quit or gotten hurt or something. It
wasn't really an option.
It wasn't really an option, I guess. I really wasn't thinking about it, I guess. Piss poor planning? I don't know.
So what was the first moment where the military surprised you or wasn't necessarily what you thought it was?
Since I was so young, I lived with my family this whole time. I think it was a huge reality check. I was always around the military, so I always knew what military looked like. I lived on base, so I knew the regimen of working out as groups, and I saw it all over Fort Bragg. So that didn't really, and I was always in the woods. I was a guy that was, as a kid, I didn't own Nintendos or anything like that, so I was always outside. But I think the reality of it, hits you when you first step off the bus in boot camp. You're like, crap, this is real. Mom isn't here anymore. You just forced to grow up, make decisions on your own. When they're talking about life insurance, sign here for medical insurance. Hey, how do you want to split your life insurance if you pass away? Just that kind of, moment, I guess, is the reality of it. When it hits you in the face.
Some of the adult requirements.
Yeah, just you have to be an adult now. You're talking for yourself. You don't look over to your parents type deal for guidance or anything. It's just all you.
Did you go straight from basic into BUDS?
No, at that time, now they have a program that it's you go to BUDS prep. Back then, it was because they knew they had a high attrition rate in BUDS. What they do is they send you to, they call it a SEAL source rating. So there was like 8 jobs within the Navy that the SEALs wanted people to focus on. So if you quit, you would end up having to go back to the Navy as the job that you went to school for. So A school or your MOS school. Mine was PR, parachute rigger, which was in Millington, Tennessee for the Navy. So I learned how to pack ejection seat parachutes and aircrew survival equipment stuff. And
that was my first job in the military.
There you go. So that's what I learned, but
awesome.
That was the extent of my Navy knowledge, I guess. From there, I went to BUDS. Actually, I had a little 6-month gap there because my BUDS class convening date was pushed, or I was in the next line. The next class, I went to Pensacola, Florida for about 6 months to teach Saudi pilots how to swim. So that was it. That was my, what they call fleet time in the Navy, is teaching pilots how to swim, or Saudi pilots how to swim as they went through flight school there in Pensacola, Florida with the U.S. aviators. And then went straight to BUDS, class 219.
How did you prepare yourself for BUDS?
Like I said before, and what I tell people now, my mindset then and what it is now is way different. But how I prepare myself, I just try to do all. Physically, I'd try to prepare myself. No, not much lifting weight. It was just all geared towards calisthenic type work, long runs, make sure I had boots on instead of tennis shoes, running with pants, pull-ups, push-ups, sit-ups, that kind of stuff. I was trying to stay as lean as possible to go to Buds. You don't need to be a super strong beefcake to be at Buds. Most of it's all staying healthy and endurance, working on endurance. So that's what I did. I did a lot of beach runs on soft sand, a lot of swims, long swims with fins, swim with no fins. There wasn't much to train to. There's no like training programs that they publish now, like they do now. You go to sealswick.com and there's workout regimens, preparing people to go to Buds and stuff. Then it was just go.
Did you do anything to prepare yourself mentally?
Mentally, I think I felt like I always had I was hard-headed. I was naturally that. I don't feel like I ever quit anything in my life at the time. But one thing my dad told me, and I tell kids now, or I tell guys now, maybe girls here soon, who knows, that SOCOM opened all special operations to females as well. What I tell them now is you have to have envisioned yourself already with a trident, already with whatever you want to be before you even start it. Because if you don't, that's, you got to ingrain that in your head. I talk to guys now, hey, what's your backup plan? Some of them like, well, if I don't make it, I will probably get out and work with my father, or I'll do this. I'll use my degree to do this. And I tell them right away, I'm like, hey, look, I'm just letting you know that plan B is going to quickly become plan A in Buds. Like, they will make sure that you, they will exploit that weakness of yours. When you're sitting in a surf zone, freezing to death,
Plan B.
The plan B is
starts
quickly
looking really good.
So I always try to get into people's head, what's your backup plan type deal, and if they do have a solid backup plan, it worries me a little bit, and I always tell them, hey, so what's after Buds for you type deal? What do you think? How do you see it? I just want to do the best that I can do. I always try to see if they've envisioned. Maybe professional athletes do it now. The visualizing of throwing the pitch, or the visualizing of throwing that football or something is super big now, that mentality. And I tell guys now, you have to have the successful people in life, successful people in Buds, we'll stick there, is people that never lost that focus. Yes, you're going to be weak, and you'll have to kind of piggyback off of your teammates, yoke up with them, and as they carry, to make the burden a little lighter, but you just never lose focus on, look, this was just a stepping stone to my final goal. I've already seen myself with a trident. I'm going to be a SEAL. I just need to get through this training type deal.
I've noticed for me that not only visualizing, but also imagining what it would actually feel like for me and my body to be in that moment.
Absolutely.
Makes a big difference. Yeah.
Just, I didn't know what it felt like to wear gear, but I can just imagine being on a mission or something, Yeah, I could see that. Absolutely.
So how was Buds?
Well, I would do it again.
You would do it again?
I wouldn't do it again.
Oh, you would not. Yes, I would assume that.
Yeah, so Bud's about 7 months long, broken up into 3 phases. First phase, you are just in your robotic phase. You are it's just straight physical activity. The culminating event in first phase is your Hell Week,
right.
So Hell Week is at 6 days long. Get about 4 hours of sleep that week. I think we got like 2 hours on a Wednesday, and then 2 hours on a Thursday or something. But second phase is your dive phase. they start throwing academics into it now, but your times are getting faster because you have to pass every week. There's a PT test you need to pass on top of your academic stuff. So your runs, your obstacle courses, and your swims, your open ocean swims. Times start getting faster. So it's super important to stay healthy. And third phase is your land warfare phase. Yes, Hell Week was first phase, and Hell Week was hard. You're frozen a lot, but second phase, I felt second phase and third phase was just as hard because you're expected to retain data now, and you're tested all the time. Dive physics, on different weapon systems. Putting them together, taking them apart, box full of just random parts. So you're, all right, put together an MP5, you're just looking through this and he's asking you, drilling you with questions, and you have 5 minutes to do it in. So that kind of stress, obviously different than the physical stress, a log carrying and stuff in first phase, but it's just a completely different level of strenuousness, I guess. And you want it so bad that you don't want to screw it up. So,
were there any times that you were tempted to ring the bell?
I don't think so. I don't remember me wanting to ring the bell. There were times that I was very weak, as in I could think of several times in second phase. Well, let's say first phase, I thought I was going to fail one of my last tests, drown proofing tests. And that's when you do your bobbing and your hands are tied together and stuff. I would make it to the very last portion of that event, and I kept on. They give you 2 tries. The first time I just choked on a bunch of water, started coughing up, I couldn't regain my composure, and I had to retake it the next day. And after the second try, they performance drop you type deal. They give you a board and then they performance drop you. Sometimes they roll you, but most of the times, if it's for performance reasons, they'll drop you. But that was probably the closest I've been. I was like, I don't think I'm going to make this. There's just some mental block with that, getting to that last, and you just have to dig deep. And I remember kind of closing my eyes, trying to put myself in a completely different world. There's no yelling, luckily, because you're underwater. During those times, you're bobbing with your hands and feet tied. But I remember just coughing still, but just trying to get my mind into a completely different world, like zone out into something else. Coughing, but just dealing with it. Sometimes you catch your breath, sometimes you didn't, but just try not to freak out.
Can you give any tips for helping someone to stay in that mental space? Like how not to overreact or to panic in that moment?
Yeah. So I say this just like in the SEAL teams too, when stress is put on combat or whatever. Freaking out, as in the training world, you have to just, in that moment, it's meant to be uncomfortable. And we can go into examples afterwards that those small little things, I found out what my niche or what my go-to thing was. Some guys were listening to music. Some guys were just, concentrating on that muscle group or that part of their body and trying to like mentally block whatever pain type deal. For me, I remember just in that example was absolutely that, was just focusing on every single little second that I could, what was going good in my body, and trying to see how I can block it, the bad stuff. How can I trick my body to kind of like forget about this bad stuff that's happening? But in combat, how that related to combat afterwards, there was I don't know how many situations I've been in. I have pants still with, bullet holes still right through the calf of my pants, just very serious situations that you don't want to catch yourself into. a lot of the stress is taken care of, or you don't really think about it because you're so trained. You're so trained in those basic things so that when stuff starts happening, you don't think about it. Your brain isn't involved with it. You're just reacting what you've trained to do. It just becomes very primal, I guess. And that's what I say what the SEAL teams were. You know, people, I'll say, man, you guys are just, you know, you guys do this, that. I tell them, hey, look, you know, everything we do is very basic. There's nothing super high speed, but we're what I would say is masters of the basics. Same with third phase, and it started in training. They would put a sticky on a wall. So everybody was assigned this black little sticky. And after you did your classwork and stuff, you couldn't leave the class till a certain time. So if you finished it, you'd go put your gun belt on and you'd stand in front of that sticky and you'd practice, you know, whatever, your immediate action drills really quick or over and over again. So I would have my rifle and I'd pretend there was a malfunction on the rifle. I'd slink to the side and touch my pistol, you know, because that was the next move. You don't deal with your rifle in that moment. So I touch my pistol. I do that for about 30 minutes. Just touch the handle of my pistol to see where it was at. And then
for 30 minutes, going back and forth.
This was probably like 2 hours worth of drills afterwards, you know, touch my pistol, you know, and then meet it and you bring it up to like a high ready and you holster it back. Do that, repeat it over and over again, and then you'll bring it all the way to the sticky, focus on the front sight, hitting the sticky, boom. You know, you do your whatever you can. We always learn to hit it 2 or 3 times. Something's good enough to hit once. We always say hit it as many times as you can until it's down. You scan and then you holster it back. You do that for hours every day for months. So there has been times when you get into training at a SEAL team or even in combat where you're just like, I don't even remember taking the shot. I just remember doing it. And because your brain isn't involved anymore, such a muscle memory, you already know what to go to. So that alleviates 99.9% of the stress. Same with drills as a ground force commander. I had, when we got troops in contacts, I would say the exact same thing in the same order every single time. I had my little 3x5 card that I'd write it down on really quick. People are like, you'd write in combat? Like, yeah, we'd shoot back and then I'd get cover, and I knew my job was to make sure is everything outside of what is happening. So in other words, as a ground force commander, I was in charge of all these stacks of air. So there's a Predator overhead. There's probably AC-130 gunship, F-18s or whatever, some type of strike plane, A-10s, close air support, some type of CASEVAC, some casualty evacuation, some medical platform. What we call is up and out. You're looking up and out. So I'm in control of everything outside of our little bubble. The senior enlisted guy, my chief or my senior chief, is reacting and maneuvering guys on the ground. I'm maneuvering everything else outside of our little bubble. So that's my job. So I would get cover. I'd react to the attack, and then I'd get cover. And as guys are fighting, I'm listening over communications where my guys are at. Guys are reporting in. If I need to if it's really bad, I'll forward position quick reaction forces. I said the same thing to higher headquarters, our JOC, troops in contact, what the situation, assault reports, what we call it, situation of the enemy, how many people, what they're shooting with, what we're doing, what we're engaging with, what do I need, So I'm positioning, that's how I fight. I help my guys. That's my niche as a ground force commander. So I say that so often that when we get troops in contact, it just became second nature. I wouldn't stress about it just because I knew people knew what I was going to ask them, and I knew what I needed to report, I guess. So it became very natural. So just mastering the basics, I think, relieves 99% of the stress. don't get ahead of yourself, you know.
Were there times that felt tedious or boring?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So a great example is every time, so SEAL teams or platoons are like in this 2-year cycle. For 6 months, you're professionally developing yourself. Individuals, snipers go to some type of hunting school. You know, they're just professionally, they're perfecting their craft.
Right.
For 6 months. 6 months, you're doing a workup together as a team, and as your assault team, as your platoon, your troop, and close quarter combat. You start back from the beginning. You go back to the very basics. It's like 2-man entries with pistols, and you do this 2-man entries with pistols in an empty room. And you practice what you would say to each other, you know, what you'd clear, and you kind of talking out loud, how you're scanning. And then you do 4-man entries with pistols. And this is like over days and days. Then you do 4-man entries with long guns. And then you do, then you do multiple rooms, and you put targets in there. And then to the point where when you're done, and it's super tedious, you're like, oh my gosh, you know, I got it. You know, it's mostly for the new guys to get into the rhythm of what that team does. But by the end, you are clearing multiple rooms on night vision, engaging targets with lasers, not saying a word. Because you've done it so many times, you already know that, well, he should be having his gun, you know, down if he's cleared. He's not. You can see out of the corner of your eye. So he's dealing with something, so only call one more. You know, you already know these things. You know the body language of the guy. You know what he's saying with his laser. You know, if he's trying to release you on something, he's tending to something else, you know. So that's what you need, though. You need that tediousness up front so that you can do those more advanced things. But we're still just masters of that basic. We're so good at the basics that we're able to do those clearances with night vision, with lasers, not saying a word, you know.
It's actually quite profound.
Is it? Like
I think
philosophical?
So. Yeah. Well, no, I just, if you think about it, if somebody wanted to apply that in their daily life, like if they're struggling getting up in the morning, or if they're struggling with some of the simple things that, you know, they keep pushing snooze.
Yeah,
on their,
that's true. Yeah,
on their phone, like
that's the habit.
Just learning to master those basics. And so even if it seems tedious, if you just start making it so much ingrained in a routine that, like Tim Ferriss, he loves routines of excellent performers, and he's always asking them about their morning routines and things, to find that people have very typically things that they do specifically every morning.
Yeah.
So it's just ingrained in. So it's not, if you're waking up in the morning and you're doing some workout, you don't take time to even think about it because it's so ingrained in just that's what you do.
Yeah. I can see like just basketball players too. I mean, I can't imagine. I was never a basketball player, but I always intrigued me, you know, Kobe Bryant leaving high school and going into the NBA. And, you know, I remember seeing him when I was younger, when they interviewed him and stuff, how many hours a day he put into training. And he talked about the hours that he would spend on each point of the 3-point line, shooting, and just like feeling what the ball felt like, getting off his fingers. Like he was so used to that. I mean, how many times does a basketball player really is ever in the same situation? He's throwing it off balance, but the basic is he knows what that ball feels like rolling off his fingers, and how much strength, you know, how much weight is, you know, he kind of tell how far this ball is going to go. But that's so basic. And how long did it take him to get that such a dumb basic thing down? I mean, so that was, I guess it's kind of the same, yeah, it has the same application.
Right. Practicing those menial things.
The tedious.
Tedious. Yeah. While you were in beds, how did it feel when you would see people going to ring the bell?
I I thought it was motivating, seeing people, I just beat another person out. Maybe like a runner, a marathon runner, passing people. Let me just get to the next. Let me get to the next guy, or let me push it to the next guy. I'll slow down after that. In buds, it's a marathon. There's times when you're comfortable. I was never first place at anything. I think that my best events were the obstacle course. I think it was probably top 5 in the class. But there's times that it got super freaking hard, and you have to look at that. You have to kind of break buds down into that, because it just gets overwhelming if you start thinking, oh crap, man, I just passed Hell Week, but I still have 5 more months to go of this hell. So a lot of times, as things start to get more stressful, you just break down your goals, just get smaller and smaller. You know what, let me make it to the next event. Let me make it to the next meal, let me make it to mid-rats, your midnight meal. Or let me make it to the next person that quits. It could be as simple as that stuff. So those little small events were very motivating. They were very, you kind of have to celebrate a little bit, but yeah, it was motivating.
So then every time you reached that signpost, would you do like a little internal celebration?
Yeah, I mean, you just a split second of celebration, and you're like, oh crap, well that's, now where do I need to, what's the next thing type deal. But the good thing about the SEAL teams, or just in buds, people know who are there for business and who aren't, complainers type deal. So once you start weeding, there's tons of, they call it character evaluations. In buds, like the instructors will make you evaluate your peers, like peer evaluations. And they'll see who's within your peers, who's not getting along type deal. And those guys are focused on. But once you start getting into that niche of that small group of people that are, this is going to be the solid crew, people are helping each other left and right. There were super fast swimmers, super fast runners, and there was guys that were just teetering towards the bottom, but were rock stars. There's times that, you kind of form a little pack around this guy, and, the fast guy would pull out a shirt and say, make the guy grab it. And then just, take turns pulling the guy in the runs or in the swims. They hide a piece of rope underneath their wetsuit, have it wrapped around their waist, and then that guy would just hold on to it with his hands and just don't look up, just kick, and I will guide, we'll try to guide. So there's times you're just gonna be weak. There's, but they also want to see that. They want to see that teamwork. They'll beat you if they catch you cheating, but they kind of know already, and they kind of want to see what you're gonna do for guys that you're willing to, help across the finish line.
What do you think really separated you and the other people in your class that graduated versus the ones who ring the bell?
I went in there. I always dealt with adversity. Growing up, I was always the smallest guy. I'm not a freaking 6 foot, 200-something pound Hollywood SEAL. So what the guys that I always saw make it through buds were kind of your average Joe guys. For example, I felt comfortable in adversity. I dealt with it my whole life. And the guys that had the most trouble graduating or getting through buds were the guys I felt like were, you get in a height line at day one of buds, like I think we had 180 something people in our buds class. You get in a height line from the tallest to the shortest. Me and this guy, Mark Berry, we were the shortest guys in the class. And you look at these guys in between, you have like NFL prospects, you have just these phenoms. And there was one guy in my class that he was recruited just to run triathlons for the Navy. So pretty much they wanted to represent, they were going to use him as a recruiting tool. But they wanted him to have a trident and graduate BUDS as a SEAL to run these marathons. He got second place like that previous year in the Kona Ironman.
Wow.
So this guy, when we started off training, he was just, we have these huge tracks, and I remember him just lapping us, like the whole class just lapping, and the same with the pool. And when you say you're lapping people that are collegiate cross-country runners, like this guy was just a freak of nature. And I remember the swims, seeing him, how he swam in the 50-yard pool. He pretty much hold his breath underwater halfway, come up, he did like 3 strokes, kicked off the wall. He was just over way before everybody was over. And in doc, so in doc is kind of your first 3 weeks-ish of BUDS, he quit twice. Just because he was such a fine-tuned machine, and I don't know if he was so used to being praised and having his protein shakes and his supplements at a certain time, and I'm sure he had his masseuse, and he just was not used to being told every day, 100 times a day, how sorry you are and you're chafed, frozen. All right, we just finished this 5-mile run that everybody failed. Good job, guys. You're going to get wet every hour on the hour for the next 24 hours. Just this demoralizing thing. And to me, I just had no expectations of that. I never really was a super successful kid to that point. I was great in school. Academically, I felt like I was a rock star, but I was never a physical phenom. And that's what I saw some of these people as, is the people that were quitting were people that I thought would never, like, man, I'm going to probably quit before this guy does. And I think back to it now, and I think, these people were probably told they were the best ever in their football teams and all this. They were always number one, but BUDS will filter out. It will make sure they know that you suck and you're worthless and you don't know anything. And I don't care where you came from type deal.
So you think it boils down to a lack of adversity or dealing with difficult situations?
Yeah, and I'm sure they had their difficult moments. I'm sure to get to the NFL, I'm sure they had to practice their butts off, But a lot of these guys I felt were, they were just genetically, they were just genetic athletes. Some people in there, I have Brock Davidson, my first team. Never in my life would I say this guy's a SEAL. He was a little chunky, but the guy it was sleeting, raining, and this guy was a country boy. He worked on a ranch. He was like 3rd generation rancher. His hands, they had these big old paws of hands that were calloused over. That was his life, was being cold and miserable. And he's like, all right, boys, let's go, And he's soaking wet, freezing. He's like, all right, it needs to be done. So I think this lack of adversity was, I guess, lack of mental adversity. I'm not saying that they didn't have any physical adversity, broken bones and stuff, but like having to mentally push themselves, I guess, or just being comfortable, uncomfortable,
right.
Dealing with that,
right.
Hey, you know what? I'm freezing, but that's all right. Let's just go.
In the military, we use the phrase "embrace the suck" a lot.
Embrace the suck. Yeah, that's it.
A lot. So how did it feel to complete BUDS training?
Well, it was awesome. I finally, but BUDS is only the first 6 months, and then you have jump school, then you have to go to STT, SEAL Tactical Training. So it's short-lived almost, because once you check into your team, the guys there, will quickly say, all right, good job. Everybody here has done it too. So shut your mouth. You don't know anything. So yeah, you celebrate the small accomplishment and you move on. You shut your mouth again and you don't know anything, and everybody here has done it. So
just starting back over at the bottom again.
Yeah.
Did you deploy in your military experience?
Yeah. So in the military during I was prior enlisted. I came in as an enlisted SEAL, and I was at SEAL Team 4 during that time frame. Each SEAL team was regionally focused, kind of like the Army ODA SF teams. So 7th Group was our counterpart in Central and South America. I wanted SEAL Team 3, but my first language was Spanish, and they're like, no, you're going to SEAL Team 4. So I spent most of my time in Central and South America. So Panama-Colombia border, Colombia-Ecuador border, Tres Esquinas region down in Paraguay-Argentina border. Hamas has a really big kind of income flow from that region. So that's where I spent most of my time. In the officer realm, I did, finished up my degree, went to officer candidate school, boot camp all over again, and came back 5 days later as a AOIC, an assistant officer in charge of a platoon, SEAL platoon at SEAL Team 10, and I just deployed to CENTCOM. So I did 5 deployments to Afghanistan and 2 to Iraq during that time frame, and then 1 was for deploy for purpose in the Middle East. So several deployments, all of them awesome deployments. Checked off every box that I've ever wanted to check off as a SEAL.
What kind of boxes were you checking off?
Well, I mean, I guess I wanted to be in combat, and I saw it. I saw the good, the bad of it. Losing friends, lost quite a few friends. Was able to hit super high value targets for the country that produced a ton of intel that was able to be exploited to hit other targets, and video that was able to be used to find locations where Americans or foreigners were being beheaded and that kind of stuff. So and of course, you also, it sounds sick, but I wanted to shoot. I wanted to shoot somebody. I know it sounds bad, but I guess I equate it to like a surgeon going to medical school, doing his residency. Yes, I'm a brain surgeon now, but I've never done brain surgery before. I'm not allowed to do brain. So that's what I did. I trained to do combat. So I trained to chase bad guys, and I wanted to do it really bad.
Have you read the book Tribe by Sebastian Junger?
No, I haven't.
He talks briefly in there about how some people are born to be, and just that have an innate need to be a warrior or to experience what that really means.
Yeah, I mean, it is just, I've never felt, just combat has this sense of adrenaline that's pushed through you that kind of sucks now, because I don't think I skydive, I rock climb, I do everything, and there's nothing that really touches that excitement. Everybody has their kind of nervous niche, and I just remember like giggling a lot. People would talk about it's just fun. It's super fun. How does getting shot at fun? I don't know. It's just fun sneaking up onto a target. I just remember targets that we know had bad guys. You're grabbing guys out of bed, they're still sleeping by the hair, and you see like 2 grenades fall out from under the pillow. You're just like, holy crap, this could have gone bad. Stuff like that, but it does suck. You don't take unwarranted risks, but you take a lot of calculated risks, and sometimes those risks it's the nature of the job type deal. So we tried to reduce all the amount of, variables that we can get killed with, but sometimes you can't take out 100% and you get caught, once in a while.
Were there times you experienced fear, or how did you manage fear?
I think there was one time, the scariest, I don't know if I was scared, but I kind of I got to a point where I was like, this is it. Now, this is, and I remember when I was coming over it, and I realized it there, but I didn't know, and I didn't feel like I was showing that. But I remember one of my buddies on the other end of the radio, he says, Omar, you're coming in broken and unreadable. And he said afterwards, when I saw him, when I survived the whole ordeal, he said, you were grunting a lot. Like you start talking and I'd hear all the firefight happening and you'd start like tensing up and grunting. And it was one time I got caught pretty much, there was no cover. I was walking down the face of a hill, super tired. We did this 3-day operation through a valley in Afghanistan, and got back early that morning. That same day we were attacked. Our little house, we were living in a little mud hut out 37 kilometers away from the nearest FOB, your base. And we were attacked, and some villagers came up and said, hey, look, there were some guys massing to attack you guys again. So we got up, and it was a long patrol to that area, but hey, we're just going to catch them as they're coming to attack us. And I remember going up and down these, because we were high in the mountains. So going up and down these mountains, just tired. I remember zoning out a little bit. And as I was walking down the face of the hill, I just got lit up, PKM fire. And I remember just falling down, and everybody thought I was dead because, we were kind of going one by one down this thing, and it's kind of sit at the top holding cover. And as I was walking down, I was walking fast. I wasn't running because it was kind of steep, but I remember hiding my head. I didn't have a helmet on or anything. Hiding my head behind this rock that was just big enough to cover my head. And I remember calling headquarters like, hey, we need air support at this time. Troops in contact. This is my position. I'm the southernmost guy. Anything south of me is cleared hot. But rounds were just kept on. I can just remember I could feel the vibrations of the rounds hitting right next to me, through my elbows, because I was just trying to get behind this little rock. And that's the one that afterwards I found out I had a bullet hole right through my pants. And people thought I was dead because I was just laying there as still as I could. And Murray, the guy who was on the other line, he was saying, you were grunting every time I hear it. And I think I was just bracing for the impact of the rounds. But I had so much time. There was nowhere for me to move, nothing for me to do, because I can hear guys maneuvering and trying to lay fire down on the house that they were shooting from. But I think that was the moment that I had enough time to really process what's about to happen. Luckily, we had some Kiowa pilots burn overhead, and they just lit up the tree line and the house so I was able to scurry up, back up the hill and stuff. But yeah, that's probably the scariest time, I'd say, just because I had time to think about it, I guess.
So how were you really handling that or dealing with that? Doing the best you could with what you had, but just laying there, essentially waiting. How do you deal with your mental process of that type of situation?
I don't know. I don't know because the noise and all that stuff. I think I've never been shot before. I've gotten shot in the plates, and that hurt. I got a ricochet off my body armor once. But I don't know. I was talking, through the communications, and my little push to talks were kind of broken. I remember, trying to, hold them as, I was just focusing on what I was trying to do, I guess. And then I was trying to hear where guys were moving at, just in case some type of air support came overhead. I could at least tell them, hey, look, guys are in the tree line. I don't know exactly where they're at, but they're right in the tree line east of that 10-digit grid I passed. So don't shoot, type deal. I think that's what I was dealing with, going back to the basics type deal. But I remember there were some times that I was waiting for the impact. I remember I was like, man, this is going to be it type deal. But I never felt like I was freaking out. I never thought about my family. I never processed that type deal. I was mostly thinking about what the guys were doing, and even other moments. People are like, oh man, you must have thought it. I was like, I don't remember ever thinking about my family, my kids. Oh man, what's life going to be? It was just thinking about the guy next to you type deal.
100% focusing on what you did have influence on.
Yeah. Like I didn't, I knew my family was taken care of. I didn't regret anything. I don't remember like processing that deep, regretting anything type deal. That's what I chose. That's what I wanted to do. I don't know. I don't remember. Yeah. I don't remember ever being, why did I do this? If I could be home right now.
How about failure? Were there times that you feel like you experienced failure, or what really is your definition of failure?
I feel like I've had a super successful career. I was able to end it kind of on my terms. There were times that I don't think I've had major failure in my career. I've had failures as in not maybe getting an operation because I didn't, I could have sold it faster. I could have been the first guy to sell it. Somebody beat me to it. Because that's my job as an officer, is you are a salesman. A very high level mission might come up and there's maybe 2 or 3 teams the CO is looking at, being available and all that stuff. So there's a lot of salesmanship, I guess, when it goes into it, and reputation with amongst a team who's best suited to do this. So I've lost a couple of missions. I think the biggest thing is my biggest failure, and I've learned a lot from it. I still feel it as a failure. Not that it was all 100% my fault, but I've lost a lot of guys. One of them in particular just like irks, it just picks at me, just because I was the ground force commander for this, and we did an operation, and it ended up having to get called because the big assault force, the Afghani assault force that was trying to make it up this river valley, kept on hitting IED after IED. So they'd find them and they'd have to blow them, and it was just going to take 2. We weren't going to make the drop dead time. So I was up in a sniper element with one of my guys. Well, there's 5 of us, but our 2 sniper guys, our EOD, myself, and communicator that's also like a techie guy. He's like intercepting communication chatter and stuff. So we were trying to beat the light back. We didn't want to stay there for one more period of darkness, to wait for the next period of darkness to get back to the base. So we're like, hey, we can make it. We can scoot out of here. As the assault force leaves, we can just, we'll probably catch them, because we were on motorcycles and LTA TV, these little razors or dune buggies type deal. So as we were coming around, it took us a little longer, but as we were coming around the last kind of long mountain range, I knew this right side of the valley, and we briefed it. Our EOD guy briefed it. The right side of the valley we knew was heavily IED'd. So when we went out there, we went up the opposite side of the valley. But to get back in time, we didn't know if we were going to be able to go across another freaking valley and come up, the safe valley. So our sniper element went ahead, and I noticed him kind of going in that direction. He had an EOD guy with him up front, and instead of, I never second guessed him, or I never like, hey, what are you guys doing type deal. But I remember it was getting to the point where the night vision, it was enough daylight that you can see underneath your night vision. You kind of have to you get to a point where you kind of have to cock your helmet back, your night vision's sitting high on your head, and when you look into these little crevices, it's complete dark, so you need to look through your night vision, but then the rest of the time you're kind of looking under your night vision because there's too much light coming into the night vision. So I remember going down a wash, coming up, and we were sitting on the other side of the wash. Our EOD guy came up, and they hit an IED. And I just remember seeing, through the top of my night vision, I just remember seeing these body parts, they were like 30 feet in the air. And I dissected it like 500 times, The guys did an excellent job reacting to it. It was an ambush, a small little ambush, but it was a small ambush that came in. Our 18 Delta guy was able to take care of our EOD guy, which ends up being a triple amputee, but my lead sniper, Caleb, killed. I kind of take it personally a little bit. So that was my moment of, I'd say my biggest failure is just not doing the right thing. So always do that. I mean, I always ask is just do the right thing. It carries over as simple as if BUDS instructors go tell you to get wet and sandy, as an officer, I tell all the new officers going in, it's like, be the example, just go freaking get wet and sandy. There's going to be guys that are trying to cut corners and stuff, and but just don't be that guy. And I always have that in my head is just do the right thing.
So important lesson to learn. But a difficult one as well.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to somebody who is newly enlisting? And in particular, someone who wanted to follow your particular path?
Yeah. So new advice, I would say, take advantage of this opportunity you have. So I've seen both sides of guys that go in because they have nothing else to do, and then extremely educated individuals that they really want to take the military as their experience building process or make it a career type deal. I came in when I was just a high school graduate, so I had nothing really to offer, military isn't technical skills or anything. Whatever you put your mind to, there's always a waiver for everything. So don't let people kind of stifle any dreams that you may have. Like, just work yourself around these things. Perform. Make it so that your boss has no other option but to, this is a great guy. I'm about to lose one of my best guys just to go into this new program. So that's what I would say is, I'd just say, hey, look, don't ever take no for an answer. Take failure, you're always going to be told you suck at boot camp and all that stuff. You're always going to be told you suck and all that stuff. Just take it with a grain of salt, grow from it. And if you're married, especially if you're going into my business, be extremely transparent. Tell your spouse everything that you know or can tell her. Support her in everything. If she wants her master's, if she wants to get, I say she because I'm married to one, but a female asking or telling her husband, just support them in anything that they want to do, because the military, you're going to be gone. Your business is not in the United States. Well, at least my business was not in the United States. My work was everywhere else in the crap holes of the world. So especially if you come in my community, you're going to be traveling a lot. You're going to be doing what you love doing. So let your spouse do what they love doing. Support them. Let them be their own person. Let them have their own life. It'll be way easier. If they're sitting at the house waiting for you to come back from a trip, then it's going to be a long marriage, or a short one, I guess.
Yeah. What do you consider your greatest military accomplishment, and why?
My greatest military accomplishment? I guess award-wise, I was hand selected to do, and the operation is still very sensitive, but I was hand selected to do an operation that, and was successful at it. We finished the operation successfully. It was an operation that literally, if I would have screwed up, the President of the United States would have been standing in front of some podium somewhere, because this country would have been like, hey, what are Americans doing in our country? And either the president denies it or says, yes, there were guys doing training or something and got blown off course, whatever. So award-wise, I think, just being selected for that, briefing Leon Pineda, the Secretary of Defense at the time, and waiting for the President of the United States to tell us, yes, you're cleared to go, do this, I think was my biggest accomplishment on paper. But my personal accomplishment, within the SEAL teams, it's a good old boys club. There are very few officers in the SEAL teams, and getting accolades, number one, getting groomed for your next position, and then kind of passing it, and your bosses are like, you're ready for the next thing. So being groomed for commanding officer of the SEAL team and stuff was a huge accomplishment. It was a huge acknowledgement that I was, maybe I am pretty good at this job. Maybe I am, people see, even though I didn't, I always said, hey, I don't know why you guys are telling me good job. I didn't do crap, but sit there and talk on a radio. My guys did it. So getting that feedback and just moving up in the ranks smoothly in the SEAL teams, which is not everybody does. Some guys get kind of weeded off and go to different programs and stuff, but the opportunity to go to possibly become a SEAL commander or CEO of a SEAL team. But I had to outweigh the options with my wife, and if I take this is going to be, we're going to be in it for 30 years. I'm at 23 now. What do you want to do? And we were both tired. I was mentally tired. And then just getting the acknowledgement from the guys saying, dude, I'd go to war with you any day type deal. That was enough for me, that, I made it type deal. So
why did you want to become an officer?
Well, several reasons. One of them was one of my mentors, Mark Schaefer, I remember he was the OIC, my officer in charge of my first platoon. I was a brand spanking new guy, and he saw something in me, and I remember him always saying, like, dude, once you get to a certain point, maybe look at this officer thing. And so that kind of stuck in my head. But my dad, he did 30 years as an enlisted guy, extremely successful career. And he always told me, Omar, if you're going to make this career, become an officer. He sees these young majors and stuff that are retiring. He's like, man, I did 30 years and they're still making more retirement pay. He had irked him. So he always said that, he always said, if you're gonna make this career, become an officer. So it was like twofold. Almost I was being mentored by somebody that I really looked up to, and my father at the time. So I got to a point where I was about to start a family, and my career choice was to become a SEAL, to stay as a SEAL, and I entertained the idea of becoming a SEAL officer, and so I just pushed ahead with it.
Were there any surprises for you switching over and experiencing the world as an officer versus enlisted?
It is. So I saw the good and the bad of it. So within the SEAL teams, we're really good about growing officers from within. Some guys are successful at it because they never. Some guys are unsuccessful at it just because they never leave the enlisted world. Like mentally, they still want to be a shooter. They still want to, and they still want to be in, kicking in the door type deal. They don't really know the niche that they're filling within, how important it is to fill within that team. Luckily, I had great mentors, and that was quickly made very apparent to me. So I grabbed it and I embraced it, and that was my niche. That was my baby. This is how I make the team successful. But I think surprise-wise, maybe you're dealing with these very alpha male personalities. So surprise-wise, maybe how many times I had to stand in front of the CO and talk him off the ledge, kicking, a guy out of the SEAL teams for some alcohol-related incident, or, so yeah, I think that is probably the biggest surprise as an officer. And people are like, hey, officers are always on the computer doing paperwork. I'll tell you right now, senior enlisted, I remember my senior enlisted guys did just as much paperwork as I did. So paperwork-wise, it didn't really surprise me. Maybe it surprised them, but the new age of warfare, everything's electronic. So, guys that are entertaining the idea of becoming an officer and they're thinking, well, I want to be a shooter. Look, you're going to be doing some shooting, and you're going to be on a computer, just like your chief or your E7 or E8 within your team is going to be doing. So, yeah.
With all your experience with leadership in the military, what are important aspects to you of leadership, of quality leadership?
Yep. Quality leadership. I always took the approach. So number one, there were some times that I had a good answer. I think a good enough answer that I could say, here's the answer. But I always took the opportunity, and I always enjoyed and appreciated leaders that took the opportunity to bring it to the table and be the last ones to speak. They would get there, hey guys, this is the problem. This is the assets we have. This is the resources that we have. How would you guys tackle it in this timeline? I might have already, came up with an answer, like a 75% solution, but you just stifled the talent that you hired if you don't do that. There's geniuses in that room. You hire these people for a reason. They were selected for a reason. Let them shine, So I always did that. I always made it an effort every time we were planning or in leadership to be the last one to talk. Listen to all ideas. Sometimes guys would take me over the 100% finish line, with their ideas type deal. And not only does your idea get better, but that person has just gotten ownership of part of that. That he has skin in the game now. He wants to prove something to you as well. He has buy-in. So, you have people working for you instead of like, well, it's whatever. It's his idea. He didn't want to listen to me type deal. So I always liked that. I always liked the leaders that were the 80-20 guys, 80% people, 20% business, as in, people were in our community, people are, everything else. People are the asset, I can always find a gun. Maybe it's different in some oil drilling I'm not a driller type deal. You need the drills, but within our community, we are very good about taking care of people. And you can always tell the guys that, they wanted to shine, and that sense of teamwork just wasn't there anymore. I was always brought up, and I can give a crap who takes the glory of this. the true team, nobody really fights for the glory. Everybody knows what the end goal is, and we're all fighting to get there together type deal. So whatever they can do to get us past that finish line, those are the smoothest running machines, instead of that one guy that says, yeah, I'll do that, and he runs off and does like his own little thing just to prove something or whatever.
It's interesting that I asked you about leadership and you talk about teamwork and the team dynamic.
It is, because I was maybe a leader on a spreadsheet, I'm at the top.
Right.
But it's literally ink on a piece of paper. I was just holding one little job within the group of guys that made this thing possible. So it is very difficult to say leadership, to not tie the two. I was part of a team, and I was the guy that had to answer for when things went good and when things went bad. That was my job.
It sounds like what's really important to you with leadership is being able to unify that team and to get the most value out of that team and to get that team unified in their purpose.
Yeah. And the biggest thing in doing that is digging down into your team, getting to know everybody. People don't realize, okay, you have your prima donna SEALs that get the glory and the guns and the beards, but then, as an officer, I remember I became so much smarter just talking to my cryptological guy, my crippy, or my linguists, or I became smarter by knowing their jobs a little bit more, what really went into them. So when I briefed stuff up, I could talk halfway smart about these things. So at that point, I truly embraced the fact that everybody's job is super important. The more I get to know these people, number one, I know, he has 3 kids, his wife and him are having marital problems. I know these things, but also when I'm standing in front of the boss, hey, sir, that timeline is unrealistic because this data will not be analyzed and produced within this timeline, because I took the time to, hang out with the guys in the freaking freezing vault, looking at their map data or something that they would geek out over and stuff. So, but I think that I literally, and this is nothing new, I just literally would copy people that I really admired and I really enjoyed working for, and I just did it.
What do you think it is that makes a SEAL so adaptable?
What makes them so adaptable? Number one, I think, is the training. We are put through a plethora of, I think it's all in the mantra of the SEAL, sea, air, and land. I feel like they truly train us in all aspects of warfare. Next is the mentality of it, just that never quit, I'll figure it out, I will make it work type deal. Lastly, I think, once you're super good, and kind of going back to being the masters of the basics, once you're super good at the basic stuff, the basic warfare, fighting wars, basic assault stuff, basic, and you become masters at that, you can take that basic knowledge and apply it to something else. And I think that's what made us so good at, coming from direct action. That's all I did was special reconnaissance, DASR in Iraq and Afghanistan, to a point where they're like, all right, hey, we landed, and hey, you're going to be doing this mission at this time. Things like 2009, when we were heading back to Afghanistan, the ODA guys, the Special Forces guys, stayed in Afghanistan, and they were starting this new initiative, the Village Stability Operations, VSO. They were living out in the villages and stuff. This was like their bread and butter, and but they were spread so thin that I remember us landing in 2009. They're like, hey, you have this new mission. It's called VSO. like, what the heck is that? And then we just got what we knew about it and we applied it and we became successful at it. I think just us being super comfortable at those basic concepts and us have been pushed in training to catastrophic situations just builds that confidence, I guess, to be able to adapt to any. There's not things much harder than doing a duck drop, like you're skydiving out with your boats out in the middle of nowhere, coming across, long transits, coming across the beach, hitting a target, coming back across the freezing beach, getting on your boats and head. I feel like right now there's nothing warfare wise that's harder than that, and I think that training is just boost the confidence. Like, yeah, we'll knock it out, we'll figure it out type deal.
So if there's someone who struggles with their confidence, but maybe wants to hold themselves up to a higher standard, like a SEAL does, what advice would you give them? So
I would say you can always be the subject matter expert of something. You're good at something. Everybody's good at something. Just be that subject matter expert. My son, for instance, he's a small guy like me. I was like, buddy, I'm sorry, but you're never going to be this big dude. He became really good at. He's like, he had some self-image issues and stuff, and he just became really good at kickboxing, and to the point where he got his black belt in kickboxing, Muay Thai, and all this stuff. So you can see the confidence building within him, and I think martial arts does that. Period. Helps you kind of get beat down, but I always tell the guys, especially new guys and people that are struggling, so you got to freaking dive into this stuff. Make it so that your boss can never do this job without you. He can't cut you loose because you're so good at this. I'm not talking about aesthetics. I'm the best looking person or anything, but if your thing is computers, be the best computer freaking guy. If your thing is art, then just be the best. Hell, push the envelope on it. Create your own new stuff. Be so good at it that you're not having to fit in no crowd. People are looking for you for advice. They're looking for you for your expertise. Doesn't matter what the hell your reputation was beforehand, but they're like, this is the guy to go to if you want to learn whatever, culture, a certain culture or something. This guy might have bombed it in the SEAL teams or whatever. So there are guys that within an assault team, they weren't the best, but they go to maybe they call it special reconnaissance teams, more of our human team guys, and they just blow up out there. They leave, down and frustrated, and they come out on top. You might see them on a deployment later on, advising some colonel or, general out there on culture and human intelligence type stuff. So it's like, just grab something and become the best at it.
Are there habits that you learned in the military that you apply regularly in your civilian life?
Habits in the military, workout. Within the military, I never realized how much exercise really helps you mentally, both just relieving stress, the endorphins it pushes. So if anything that the military has taught me is, and I come from a culture, the SEAL teams, everything's about working out, being in shape. But besides that, working out wise, habits, I feel like, if anything, a habit of mine is always like, everything's a mission type deal. Like, I always bring up contingency plans just to be prepared. So that's maybe a good and bad habit. I always think of, hey, the worst situation that could happen on, as we're planning, hey, we're going to the airport, sure. And then I have to bring up like 2 contingency plans. It's something extremely robotic, but it's a habit that's been ingrained with me. I don't know too many things, and I would advise the military, if anything, to young kids coming out of high school. If you don't know what the heck you're doing, the military instills some pretty freaking good habits. I always say, hey, don't take that, hey, I'm going to take a break after high school, because it never really works out that way. If you don't have a plan, go to the freaking military. The military isn't this Vietnam era, like losers go there type deal, just draftees and, people that don't want to be there. Your eyes would be opened up to so many other jobs, so many other cultures, so many other people that, hell, you might find yourself in the military. You know what? I work in this as a dental assistant, and I met this, I don't know, orthodontics guy, and this is what I want to be when I grow up. It'll focus you, and it's only 4 years. Most jobs are just 4 years. So if you don't have any habits, just go to the military. They'll make you have some habits.
Spoken like a good recruiter, right? No, I
That's
agree.
my plug.
I actually agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think it's kind of impressive if I find somebody who really is putting in a lot of skill sets and habits that really are meant to be more of a high performer without the military.
Yeah.
Because the military is just such a great place to really understand that structure.
Yeah.
And you see people, maybe they are in for only 4, but then you also see people that are in longer, but then they continue to find ways to apply that structure in their life, whether they're in the military or not.
Yeah. And even if it's as dumb as, they say, well, we like vets because they're on time all the time, and within the military, they teach you why it's important to be on time. Okay, you're not on time in the private sector, then you get fired type deal.
Right.
In the military, you're a new guy, you're not on time at your first command. Well, guess what? You just left. You're a man down for your, what they were counting on. You're slowing the whole operation down. It's so there's ramifications for a lot of what you do, good and bad choices.
Right.
So it teaches you that, I guess. And, a lot of great habits of, just simple discipline and being courteous and stuff. So, and how to dress, I guess, nicely, maybe.
Nicely, maybe. Yeah. So the military may attempt to teach you things, but not everybody always learns all those things. So as a recruiter, are there things that you look for specifically, or characteristics you like to see in somebody that you're signing on?
Yeah. So within the SEAL teams, there was just something about like this look in the individual's eye, or just that desire. All they do is, well, me focusing on the SEAL and EOD side of things. Since that's my community, I always look for that. I always ask them, what's your second choice? What's your backup plan type deal? I always look for a great athlete, collegiate athlete type deal. But besides that, when I also do aviation, and when I help out within our office, we have aviators, nuclear people, medical people that are recruiting these for their fields. And when I do their interviews, obviously they have a lot of technical skills that they need, or licensings and stuff. I always like hearing people's desire for an adventure, though. When they talk about the military, I always hear them. I just like listening. I just want to travel. I just want to do these things. So that's exciting for me, because there's something that's innate with them, not just, hey, I'm looking for a job type deal, because I can't find a job with my, I don't know, political science major or my basket weaving major that I thought was going to be so cool, and I had all these ideas, and the military is the only place I can go to. So I
Do you get people that come to you that talk like that?
No, but you can kind of tell. I mean, they're putting forth their best, but you can kind of tell that
they're not committed.
They're doing this because they have nothing else really to do right now. You can just kind of tell.
That's not a good reason to join the military.
Yeah. No.
I don't have anything else to do, so why not? How do you respond when people tell you thank you for your service?
So super uncomfortable because I to me, it's the job I chose. I really liked it. I still love it. I still love serving in that capacity. I don't look at it as like I'm super patriotic, and I know that this is what we do is to protect our homeland. Everything that we do is to the ultimate goal is to protect our homeland. We go to these countries. Why do we fight so many wars? Well, I question that in locations sometimes why we spend the money to go out here, but a lot of it starts off with the question like, okay, hey, these guys are getting too strong in this area. We need to fight them. We need to hurt them at their house before they come over and hurt us, type deal. But what I respond to now, and I heard it from this older guy, and I think he was a Vietnam veteran, is I always say now, thank you for your support. I never really realized it, but if somebody has the courage to say, hey, thank you, because I've told guys, like I've just been close, like, hey man, thanks for your service, awesome, thanks for everything you do, and I enjoy seeing like the younger guys, yeah, no problem, but I always I kind of thought about that Vietnam guy in the era that he grew up in, right. When the public wasn't as supportive. So he says, hey, thanks so much for your support. I thought it was like, you know what, I'm gonna take that from him and say the same thing. So that's my verbal response, but my physical response is just uncomfort, just being uncomfortable.
Are there any books that you would recommend to people as far as that have been influential or helpful to you in your military career?
Well, none of I've read there's a couple of books that friends have written. I've always, when I came into the SEAL teams, it was very taboo to talk about, being a SEAL, but now Hollywood has kind of, brought it out into the light and everybody wants to know. So I always said, I'm not ever going to write a book. I'm not going to do these things. All right. So I guess one of my favorite books, because it's helped me personally, was Colonel Grossman. He has On Combat. He has one on Killing, but it talks about the psyche of it. Kind of dissects it very well. What happens to your brain. He goes over a lot of case studies, mostly police officers, has similar situations, that shock. And so it's helped me out quite a bit. But I've had friends, Lone Survivors, it's an entertaining book to read. Marcus Luttrell, I worked with Morgan Luttrell, his twin brother, and Jocko Willink, he's a SEAL out from the West Coast on extreme ownership. Great insight, a lot of what I think, but they're just putting it on paper, I guess.
Right.
And I think one of the ones that as an officer that I enjoyed reading was Pete Blabber. He wrote a book, The Mission, The Men, and Me, and that's the kind of the priorities that he goes over as an officer when he made decisions on things. Missions first, then my men, and then me. So it's, I guess, similar mindset as me, but he's a Army Green Beret, Army Delta guy, and he kind of uses a lot of those. The Mission, The Men, and Me, and he dissects it into case studies that he's, missions that he's completed and how he internalized things and how he made decisions. So I thought it was a pretty cool insight in seeing as a leader. Those have been my favorite leadership books, I guess. But I was reading, I think one I just finished was on with Colin Powell, his leadership book, The Leadership Secrets of Colin Powell. That's that stratosphere, we're talking Department of State thinking, but again, if you dissect it down, it's very similar. Leadership attributes, leadership thinking that make them successful at that level and to a team level of 18 guys type deal. So.
Are there any stories from your career that you really enjoy telling people?
I have lots of stories. I think maybe I always like telling stories that showcase, just what, not so much about me, but just about the team, what we were able to accomplish and with teamwork and the type of guys that we recruit. I remember, just looking at the picture, I'm trying to think of a story, and I'll just, I remember in Afghanistan, this was 2011, we had a mission that had just popped up. Within these countries, we have airplanes that flood the air with, video, and they're just constantly flying overhead. And they so happen to have found within our area, they're like, hey, something's going on here type deal. See a guy on the roof with an RPG, what's going on? And they were about 12 miles away from us. So we call in, it's like, all right, definitely we're going to need some type of air because the mountains here are just too, 12 miles to walk that would just be horrendous. So we planned the whole mission out. The guys busted their tails just to get everything done. They're like, hey, we have air if you request it, but it's only for this period. It's like, sure, we'll get it for this night and we'll walk back type deal. So we planned it out. We're about to step off, get the word that we're not about to step, like that during the day, say tonight, we're going to have a couple hours, say about 8 hours before we were going to wait for the helicopters. They tell us, hey, air has been canceled. They've been diverted somewhere else. But, instead of sitting there, I remember one of our guys, Jared Rich, he was like, we're like, all right, well, the chief was like, well, that sucks. This would have been a great target to hit. All the data's coming in, all the intel's coming in that there's going to be like a big show here. Somebody's going to be here. And Jared was like, dude, I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to make this target. I don't care if I get there butt naked. I will strip down equipment as I get tired, but I'm going to make it there. Like, we have to make it there. So we decided to step off. We'll walk it the 12 miles. Screw it. And these mountains they're freaking mountains up there, the altitude of them. And so we left earlier before it turned dark, and we started patrolling that kind of general direction. So we patrolled all night, and we got there just about 30 minutes before first light. It took us all night just to get there. And it so happened to be probably one of our most fruitful targets we've ever hit. We killed, there was quite a few people killed, super high level Taliban individuals that the U.S. had been looking for a while. They were entertaining an airstrike type deal, but there were other people that were like, hey, why are you going to do this? There's civilians and all that stuff. So we were able to mitigate all that stuff. But just the type of people, I just remember that statement, Jared saying like, dude, I will get there with my pistol, like around my waist, and that's it. I don't care. I'm going to get there. And sometimes in my head, like, where do we get people like this? Like, I don't care what it's going to take. I'm just going to get there. And people like that, I feed off of people like that. Just and those are the type of people that are in the SEAL teams or within special operations period. I've met Army guys like that as well. That that just motivate you, and they're like, dude, there's no quitting. This is what we get hired to do. Let's make it. Let's do it. Let's prove these people wrong type deal. So that was, I remember, an exciting operation. That was that picture right there with us three. That was on our way back. but yeah, it was, I think, just looking at some of those pictures, I think, brings back a lot of great stories you could tell, I guess,
Well, Omar Vieira, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and you sharing and being willing to share your experiences and your perspectives and really what helped you to succeed in the military.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and found a new mindset to help you excel. To find more information about Omar, there are links to his Instagram in the show notes, or he's part of a YouTube channel called Own the Higher Ground. For links to these or to read his full bio, please visit www.tamfpodcast.com/OMAR.